Yeah, my art isn't selling anymore, so now I work for Sticker Zoo, my boss. But this is actually the first time where I'm dedicated to just helping an artist and not vending here myself. Imagine that was not recording, that would be horrible. It's time to work. Hello, it is not my usual background. I was going to say it's day one and the only day of DICON here at UC Davis. I'm actually not vending here. As you can see with the background, I'm currently being held hostage by Henry of Sticker Zoo.
I'm not holding her hostage.
I was being paid in Dutch Bros. Where is my Dutch Bros? This is my payment for the day. A picture perfect Dutch Bros. As you know, I am a big fan of Dutch Bros. Take a shot every time you hear me say Dutch Bros. As you know, if you're familiar with the California area, there are not many of them in SoCal. The only time I can ever get it is if I'm in NorCal. I'm actually not vending, as I said, because I'm actually employed as Henry's helper, Henry of Sticker Zoo. You probably know him from other vlogs. You've seen my past vlogs, and he's also another Artist Alley vlogger. Oh, he's jumping around. I'm working very hard right now. The joke is, if you do follow him, he does a lot of those bits where it's like, my art isn't selling anymore. Yeah, my art isn't selling anymore, so now I work for Sticker Zoo. I'm kidding. But yeah, I'm currently helping him. Honestly, this is like the first time I've ever helped anyone as an artist. Usually if I'm helping them, it's more so I'm just watching their table while they quickly go to the restroom, make a couple sales here and there. But this is actually the first time where I'm dedicated to just helping an artist and not vending here myself. Also, I've never been on the UC Davis campus. So very exciting for me. I was very in awe as we drove through until we hit the parking lot. By the time this video is up, my Anime Japan vlog is already live. Feel free to check that out if you want a more anime con-centric vlog, but not necessarily Artist Alley themed. Also, it's official that I work here because look at this badge. I officially work for the zoo of the sticker of the zoo. It's like the thumbnail, sorry. It's like, I know you're working very hard. Sorry.
Fun fact, this might be the fastest I've ever set up.
Also, con starts at 10. It is 9:33. Honestly, he's been setting up very quickly. I'm not used to that. For me, I would need at least 3 hours just because I have a lot of bulky items versus with his, it's keychains and stickers and prints. So at least he is able to put all of them on a rigid board display, and then he has Velcro that he can just attach it, so it doesn't require any type of tying and whatnot. It is currently 10:52, so a little less than an hour since the event started. There's a few people walking around. If anything, we took up a good amount of time right before con started to even like the first 10 minutes after putting up the keychains. It's really interesting seeing how different the setup is from another artist's perspective, because for myself, we do have everything labeled. However, I don't have another sign that says like what certain numbers are. It's more visual rather than a bunch of words. However, in his case, as you can see, there is this sheet that does include the sticker number or the keychain number, as well as what character it is, so it's easy for anyone to use. And I have seen a few other artists do the same thing. I think I would have to do something similar to that for my own Artist Alley display, just in case there's anyone who's helping my table and is not familiar with all of my products. They can easily do that, and there will be less worry. If anything, I learned that last year I did update my Artist Alley display so that there are identifying numbers for every single product, because before you would have to say what character name or what type of sticker or keychain design or pin design that it was. However, I realized since updating my display that having that type of individual signage for each product makes it a lot easier for customers to order, as well as for myself and my helpers to find and identify what they're talking about. And I realized for a lot of displays that don't necessarily have that, the entire transaction process just goes a lot more smoothly and there's less stress for both parties. So that is something I would recommend doing for your own Artist Alley display. It is a bit tedious because it would take a lot of work having to update the signage, especially if you add in new product or if you have product that you take away from your own. So my boss is being annoying right now. It is tedious because, especially if you have a lot of product, it would be a lot of work. I know for myself, when I didn't even have as many stickers or pins and whatnot, it took me a few days just because I needed to print out the signage, get it laminated, or at least make every single number like on Illustrator. So it did take a few days. However, super worth it. I would do that over again. It would be a bit annoying, but very much worth it. And I do recommend it for you as well. Long time no see. It is 1:38 and I'm very hungry. As a helper, I am mostly here, maybe not the main things like minor tasks, like putting together the acrylic stands and putting the keychains on the display. But other than that, I've just been here on standby in case my boss, aka Henry of Sticker Zoo Designs, needs to use a restroom or go out and get some B-roll, which I will also be borrowing. But other than that, I've mostly been putting together my Anime Riverside catalog, and in between transactions, because usually Henry's the one doing the main transactions and I just help out with inputting it onto the sheet that he has to track how much inventory we're selling and how much he's made for the day. And he uses a similar sheet for every single event. If you've ever worked with a helper before or are curious as to what it's like being a helper, typically there's a bit of a range of how much you could be working on as a helper whenever you're assisting an artist. I know for my own helpers, especially for events like Anime Expo, typically the bigger conventions, which you've probably seen a bit in some of my vlogs. Since they've worked with me for years now, they kind of know how things go without me having to tell them what to do, whether that's helping me carry the display onto the table, stock up on inventory behind the display, and even conduct transactions for a longer period of time rather than 10 to 20 minutes if I need to leave and use a restroom. I know for a lot of other friends who have helped me in the past, usually I would rather start them off pretty slowly so they're not overwhelmed, and they tend to do more small tasks such as cut stamp cards, count out stamp cards so we know how much to give for each artist participating, put business cards in each of the shopping bags, and so on. So basically a lot of tasks that don't require a lot of experience or take up a lot of brain power, so to say. Typically, as they do more events with me, I'm more likely to give them more responsibilities such as conducting transactions or I'm distracted. Mostly just conducting transactions on my behalf, especially for longer periods of time, because for events, as mentioned, like Anime Expo, where I do like to walk around and am more likely to leave my booth for a good amount of time, I need to be able to trust that whoever is helping me is able to think on my behalf, whether that's some troubleshooting happening, they know what to do. Oh, if the Square terminal disconnects for some reason, they know that they should probably turn on, turn off the Solis and whatnot. So obviously there's a varying level of experience, and it also depends on the person if they are willing to, not necessarily willing, but are able to be flexible. And it's up to you to figure that out on your own. But some things to consider if you are looking into finding a helper, becoming a helper, or just curious. And I'm also curious, have you ever been a helper before, or have you ever hired a helper? Please let me know down below. Also, if you didn't know, I will have these fans at Anime Expo. So if you're going to the biggest convention in the United States, also North America, you should get this fan. This fan exactly. Highly recommend. You will get this fan with purchase of $40 or more at Artist Alley G62. Same spot as the past couple years. Very exciting.
Subscribe. If you're not subscribed, what are you doing? 40% of you are not subscribed.
I don't know if that's true. I'm finally being fed after so long. I'm kidding. It is 2:27. I'm finally being fed.
We feed very well out here. As long as we can find the food, then we can eat the food.
Yeah, and then we eat.
Yeah.
And we ate.
There was a Thai tea that came with my order. I had no idea.
Yeah, what did I get? I got fish and chips. Delicious.
Welcome back to the channel, all the Mualcaina fans. If you guys have a name for yourself, suggest in the comments below. I suggest Mookie's, like Mookie Bet.
Yeah. Go Dodgers. I'm being put to the test. It is 5:02, so less than an hour until con ends. It's not bad. This is a good con if you are just starting out, especially if you are a student at UC Davis. Yeah, now I'm being tested for some reason for content. This is what I have to go through. I'm scared. You look scared too.
I've never seen some of these toads before. Like, which game is it from?
That's a good question. So someone who's typically vended at mostly anime conventions and maybe a few pop-ups here and there, this is my first time experiencing a college level type of anime convention, and my thoughts on it as someone who is not vending here as myself or as Mualcaina. This is a really good option to try out if you are interested in the Artist Alley scene. I know one of them is saying like, oh, go to your local market or go to your local convention. But you should even look into your own college campus if you are a college student, or even if you're not in college. I'm sure there is some type of local college event that you can vend at so you can get your feet wet with vending in person before you invest in events that have more expenses, such as the really big anime conventions or conventions that require you to travel a much further distance. And after a while, once you get the hang of vending in person, seeing what is popular in your area, that experience can help you figure out how to best vend in person at a bigger event where the stakes are much higher. Now that I have some experience of being a helper, it did teach me a few things that I should do in order to make my helper's life a lot easier when I do events and I have a helper with me, which most of the time I do, 99% of the time. One of them is to have a one sheet with all of my deals just so they don't need to remember it. I know after a while you would tend to memorize what deals you have. Like for myself, it's 3 for $12 for stickers or $5 each. For pins, it's 3 for $40 or $14 to $16 each pin, depending on the design. But in the case of someone who is helping you and doesn't have that experience, you do need to have that readily available. Another one is just clear signage on what each icon is. I do have it on each of my pin bins. However, it would also be nice to have it readily available on a sheet. In my case, I did prioritize visual identification, but I know for a lot of people, they also prefer having some type of text, so I'll probably use that. What is it called? Another thing is just better dividers for a lot of my containers, because for some of my products, like the shaker keychains, there aren't many of them. I think there's only 7 designs, so it would be easier to identify which keychain is which, because they're also different shapes and they're all in one bin. However, in the case of stickers, I have them identified. However, it would be a lot better if they had specific dividers that said, at least for stickers actually, they have corresponding numbers versus pins which have a letter and a number. So I might have to implement that in the storage of my inventory just so it's easier to look for them. Other than that, I feel like I'm on a better page compared to last year when, surprisingly, I did not have some type of letter number associated with each pin or sticker design, which sometimes I'm thinking, it's like, dang, I gave a lot of work to my helpers and why are they suffering? But now they do not suffer as much. But you know, there's always ways to improve in your storage or display, and I would like to implement those in the future. If you want to watch my experience vending at a ribbon convention, watch this video to see my experience at Anime Los Angeles, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!